Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to part 3 of making a hip-hop beat in Reason. This time I'm going to focus more in on the mixing and some of the techniques you can use to make your beats really fat and pounding. So I've broken out the tracks into the 4 individual audio mix channels, and I'm going to start working on pan, volume, that sort of thing. So I've got the kick drum and all the channels, and I'm going to route them all to one bus, a drum bus, which is going to allow me to just control things a little bit better. So I select all the channels, right click, and then you just create a new bus, and that's where all the drums will go. And this will allow me to do effects to the whole drum bus or compression or whatever it might be, especially if you're into top-down mixing. So, you know, you can set the whole level for the whole track. So want to make the kick drum a little narrower so it doesn't take up the whole stereo field. And then from there, I'm going to start working on the whole drum bus channel and then start working my way down to mixing each individual track. So once you get the levels sort of set right, you can just pop open the EQ, turn it on first, and I'm trying to just use stock plugins here. And so just a little high pass filter on the very lowest frequencies. And then I want to bring out just a little bit of the low end because it's hip hop and you want a lot of rumble, but not too much. Then search for sort of the boxy. Here, how boxy it is around 200. So just cut that out a little bit. I'm now looking for where the snare crack is. Oh, you gotta wait for the snare to come back in, obviously. And just sort of take that wonkiness out. And then maybe open up the high end just a little bit. So normally I'd take a lot longer to do all of this, but this is just sort of showing you the whole process, all the moves I make. But you definitely want to spend more time dialing that in. And as you add boost and cuts, you're going to change the overall level, so you just need to be mindful of that and the overall balance. So now I'm going to go to some of the individual tracks. This is the kick track, and I'm going to take care of some of the low end here, just the very lowest rumbliest part that most speakers can't transmit, which allows more room for the other part. And again, boost the low end with a wide shelf boost. And then look sort of for the part of the kick drum, and I'm going to mute it. You don't normally want to do this, but I'm just trying to get that clicky part, the attack. And then cut away some of that boxiness. So this sort of gives, you can A/B it that way. And also I just want to ask you to take a second to like this channel, leave any comments you have about how you might make your hip hop beats or what you'd like to learn more about. And if you dislike this, give it a thumbs down and tell me what you would have done differently or whatever. So now I'm to the snare, sort of wanting to cut away, again, the low end rumble, but not at a different spot because every instrument's going to have a different sort of frequency where there's nothing useful. And on this snare, it's a pretty low, the crack is pretty low, or the body of the snare. So I'm just gonna pull that back a bit. And look again for the snap. And just adds a little air. Maybe a slightly wider cut just so you get the crack, but it doesn't overwhelm the other sounds. And now for the ride, it sounds a little bright to me. So cut out the low end again, and I want to go after the stick attack, but cut out some of the harshness. And there you go, you can kind of hear where the stick clicks on it. But overall, I want to take the high end out a bit, so kind of combining those filters together. And now on the crash, down some of the low end. Maybe take down a little high end too, just to clear things up. I'm going to A-B it a bit. And that just sounds a little punchier. It sits in the mix a little bit better to me. Now I'm going to put a compressor on the kick drum, but I'm going to do most of the rest of the compression in parallel. And so I'm going to go with one of my favorite compressors, Red Rocks. I don't know, I accidentally clicked this one, but I meant to do the Red Rocks C1L1 or C1A1. C1L1 compressor, and it's just a really, really nice, warm sounding compressor. So I want about 60 seconds attack so that the main punch of the drum cuts through. And I want to be doing about 3 dB of gain reduction, sort of a medium-sized length release, and just get some of the makeup gain so that the overall sound is fatter. And you just hear how it takes up a little more space in the mix, a little punches through a little bit more with the compressor. Now I'm going to create a parallel channel, and you can just search for, you know, the New York method or parallel compression. You can see all sorts of tutorials on what you're going to do, but basically I'm going to create a very ugly sounding track with extreme EQ and compression settings and just blend in a little bit of it to get that real punchiness that you wouldn't want to use to distort your main channel, or you wouldn't want to apply to your main drum sound. So we're going to put a compressor on. We'll just solo this so you can hear how ugly it sounds by itself. So we're going to use a very extreme, or a fairly extreme compressor setting. And again, we do want the attack to get through, so it's a somewhat long attack. And so you hear it's thin, but it's really the ka-pa that's getting through. And now when you pair it with the regular track, you'll hear as we mix them in. And that adds just a little bit more without taking anything away from the tone of the original drum track. And yeah, there's still more cleanup I need to do on the underlying track, but I just wanted to make this video to show you guys some of these techniques. Now we're gonna start doing some reverb on the individual channels. I've showed you the way to use effects buses properly, and so I'm doing that here. I'm gonna try and put like a gate type sound on the snare, just make it a little wider. So I've got that set up there. And just so you can hear it easily, I turn the volume way up and use the filters to get a more natural sound. You don't want any low end or high end frequencies too much in there. And of course, run the part of the song without any snare. Now that's just too extreme. And a little thin still. That sounds thin to me. So I'm going to change the reverb to a plate that's perhaps a little different. And sometimes you just really have to play around with the reverb to get something you like. Now, that's a sound I like. You just got to turn the right volume up. You hear how that just adds a little more crack and dimension? I'm going to put a reverb on the whole drum set, on the whole channel. using this as a send effect here. I'm using the Abbey Road reverb technique. You can read about that online. But basically you filter out the highs and the lows to get a more warm and vintage sound. But I'm thinking that the kick is not sounding good with any reverb on it. So just gonna send the other channels to the general room reverb. And maybe a very little bit on the kick. And sort of A-Bing it with all effects and no effects on it. Now I'm gonna try and get a little distortion, saturation with the excellent Selig saturation knob. The only thing to watch out for here is that it does add gain, so you're gonna need to turn down the volume. And the volume of the other one as well, the parallel channel to match. And now I'm thinking maybe one more level of saturation. And the automatic's just too extreme here. So let's try doing it as a send effect instead. Try a few more, that's too thin. I like the way that emphasizes the attack, but it's just too extreme. So I'm gonna try it as a send effect. And I've got my Audiomatic bus there, so I'm gonna select VHS, but for some reason it introduces phase. Sometimes it happens with send effects. You can hear how it goes all phasey and hissy. And maybe I could invert the polarity and that would solve it. But I decide to go a different route instead. So after tweaking with it a bit, it just, for whatever reason, isn't working here. But not to be deterred. And also with the send effect method that I showed, it's really easy to invert the polarity just on the input section of the channel strip. But instead, I decided to just put the Audiomatic directly on the parallel channel, since that's already the sound that I'm sort of going for. That attacky. And you hear how that just really is thin and clicky. And it just makes things pop a little bit more. And while the tape made it a little fatter, I wasn't going for fat as much as it was click. Finally, I'm going to add one of my favorite plugins, the Blamsoft Bit Crusher, which sort of can emulate sort of the old-fashioned samplers, the MPCs from back in the day, and just a touch of that on the main. I'm going to route both of these drums to a main drum tech just for flexibility. And now I'm going to A-B it with this was the reference loop I was using to start with. And I think, listening to that, I think the snare needs a little more crack. And that's about where it is. So I'm going to basically take off all the effects for a second so you can hear the contrast. I'm not bypassing the insert effects because, I don't know, I'm lazy. But the rest of them you'll be able to hear. And we'll slowly bring things back in. And I will say that when I muted the effects returns there on the right, that actually didn't do anything. The way I've got it set up, you have to use the channel strips on the left. So ignore that. But thanks for watching. Hopefully you found this helpful and this will help you